Hi, Jen. How's it going? I remember speaking with class, and you were concerned about like how to know where to put your breakdowns and stuff. I'm gonna link to a YouTube in the chat here. Ah, cool. Where you notice there's places where you'd like it to be more smooth. That's awesome. So I'll try to represent like my thoughts here as best I can about like your breakdowns. I'm gonna focus in especially on where she kind of like leans into him.
I mean, we do have instant
And a couple other places maybe, but we'll talk about like spacing and stuff. Thanks for re-putting this out without too much of the onion skinning on, because that makes it kind of easier for me and more intelligible for me. So I'm going to use like a really fat, so I linked to something that kind of talks about spacing. It's just a simple little quick YouTube video. There's a lot about timing and spacing that are kind of synonymous with each other. Okay, that's as big as I can get, but we're going to work with it. So this is your move over there. Cool. Cool. So I'm just going to kind of like color in her head to represent a ball. Kind of like, you know, I like to think of these big movements. The bouncing ball exercise is forever handy, I find, when I'm working, but we're going to look at some of the spacing here and what's going on, and maybe some suggestions on how to like clean it up. So yeah, I feel like I was overly specific. I was trying to be an overachiever. I wish I could get here. Let me try something else. Let me try a different approach to this. I want to try something even simpler where I don't have to try to draw big circles. I'm just going to try to nail like the center like that. Take a look at the spacing that you do have. I'll also double check 204, that comes later. Okay, so that's kind of the move, right? This stuff, I'm going to turn on my ghosting so we can see what's going on here. All right, this is cool. So let me see. Let me turn off ghosting. Maybe I didn't get that first one in the right spot. No, I did it on the last frame and not the first frame. I should do that so I can delete this. So now I kind of have a representation of your spacing through this move, and now we can look at it with ghosting on, kind of see what's going on. I feel like, I know that you spoke to me, this isn't the one that you've called out in your comment. I'll look at that frame specifically. That is frame 204. Okay, that's here. Okay, cool. But I'll talk about this head movement first, right? So I know that you don't have your breakdowns in here. So this is 166 to 171. That is 5 frames. I'll just call it 169. You know, possibly what we can do is try to put something. Ideally, what I want it to be is closer to the 166 than it is to the 171. And I'm not sure if I've nailed that exactly, but it feels like a little bit closer. And then we go from 171 to 175, which is 4 frames. It's easy to find the halfway mark there. That's 173. So again, I want this motion to be an ease in. Let's just say I've decided. What do I want this motion to be in? I want it to be an ease in where she kind of loses control and kind of like bonks him with her head. Like, you know, I don't know if that's what you're going for, and I may be off base on that. And if I am, sorry about that. But then we have this big jump here from 175 to 178. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this back to 179. And I'm going to delete it off 178 so that I have even space to do breakdowns. But if I look at this, let me put my thing back to normal. Like my spacing is like here, here, here. It's growing, right? It's getting larger with every frame. But then it's like this huge jump there. Whoops. I need to do this back on the previous frame. Why did I lose? Okay, there we go. You know, it's here. That's a huge jump. So how many frames do we need between that to make it look smooth? Well, I think we need at least 1. And we can see what it looks like with just 1 in there, right? So let's see. Let me turn off ghosting. We'll put on 1. Let me turn it off. We'll put on 1 frame, and that's going to be 177. So where do I want this one to be? I'm going to look and say, well, I want it to be closer to the previous one than the furthest one. How close? I don't know. Maybe I'll put it on around a third of the way there, right? So now we're doing that, right? And so now we can turn off ghosting, and now we can kind of play through that and just focus on like what the green ball is doing and see how it plays. See if it seems to strobe.
No.
I mean, it's only on there 1 frame each, so it does strobe a little bit, but the spacing of it, does that feel like it's happening too fast? Or it may still be a little too fast. It depends on your tastes. So let's say this middle frame didn't work out, it's just 1 frame. Let's say I decided, okay, I saw what that looked like. I feel like I'm going to need 2 frames in there. So this 179, I'm going to push it back to 181, right? Which is here. Whoops, what's happening? What's happening? There we go, there we go. There we go. So now I want to take 179, turn ghosting off. There's probably a faster way to do that, like a hotkey. So now I'm going to delete this one. Going to delete that one, question mark. Let's see where we're at. Okay, cool. So now I want two in-betweens here, right? So I can't just do it on a third, because I'd do 1/3 and 2/3. So now I'm going to push this even closer to the previous one. So maybe like there, right? And then in 2 frames, I'm going to put it maybe halfway, because maybe we're done accelerating. And I can tell that this one is too low. It's going to give me a bad arc. So maybe I put it up there. Maybe this one is too low. It's going to give me a bad arc. So I put it, wow, half a circle. Anyways, I'm paying attention to my spacing and my arcs. And again, it's going to strobe when I play through this. Maybe it'll look better when you play through it. Or maybe just having the dots in it will kind of illustrate what I'm talking about. But now let's see if this looks any smoother. Like that looks pretty smooth, but maybe now it's too slow. I don't know what you feel. If you felt like it was fast enough before. Of course, this pose I would have to delay a bit by like 1 frame. I'd have to put that one here, take this one and delete it, right? So now things are kind of like, it's not going to strobe as much, right? Like we're speeding up. Let me turn this off. So now that if that green dot is where I'm kind of placing her head on these frames, it's going to speed up and smack into him, right? It's going to be a smoother motion because we have enough drawings in there to maintain like the persistence of vision that the audience will have of one object like moving across the screen, right? So this is a bit of trial and error whenever I do 2D stuff. I'm not like so gifted at 2D that I just kind of know like what to do, but let's look at like 204. So you're talking about, let me play this and see how it plays. So it's going to be something about the left arm of this guy. Okay, yeah, I see what's happening here. You're saying you would like to be more smooth. So what I'm seeing happening here is that spacing and timing is like very even. And I'll turn on onion skinning so we can talk about that very specifically. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of just do my best to kind of copy what you have here. So I'll say this is the start of that motion that we're gonna pay attention to, even though I know it's not, because I can see he's coming from a more upright pose. Okay. Okay. Cool. So now if I look at this with ghosting turned on, where I can see it, like what's happening. So the hand comes down and gets placed on the counter, and it kind of stays put on the counter the whole time, and that's great, right? what I'm seeing here with the spacing and how you represented it is it's very even, right? If I'm tracing the spacing on the way down, it's here, 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 and then there's a little bit of less space on the way down. But if I'm looking at like the changes between this line and this line and this line and this line, they're all very even. So if he's starting to like fall over, but he's catching his weight, it's good instinct to have it get closer towards the end, right? Like you kind of want an ease out where maybe, let me try to do like something where I show like, so this is your starting one. The next one maybe is a little bit further over that one, and then this one is closer. So like this distance is greater than this distance here, and then this distance is smaller than this distance. And if you really want to feel like the character is slowing to a stop, then maybe you need a few more poses to get that to like really read right, right? And then when you come out of it, one of the things that's happening is this elbow is jumping from like here all the way over to here in like one drawing. So that's not going to feel smooth, right? And if you look on your reference, I can kind of see that your arm is still bent like this and that elbow is still out. The place you wind up in maybe has that elbow in, but you do a hand adjust here from here to here after you push yourself off. But anyways, I'm going to stick with kind of the poses and drawings you have. But what I would do here is like you need to reverse that timing of your character pushing themselves back upright. So small space, bigger space, bigger space, bigger space, and then once they're kind of almost where they're going to go, then you start shrinking that space. And that's how you do ease-ins and ease-outs, right? So this point of the elbow here jumping over to here, that's what's causing that big kind of disconnect. So I think, you know, you almost want to keep that elbow in the same place as your character is like coming back up. That's a terrible arm, probably not the right proportions. I'm just kind of quickly doing it. You know, and then the next pose, you know, you just want to start growing the distance at this little elbow marker, whatever markers you want to use to like track this stuff. And again, you want to make sure that all your proportions are staying consistent. So maybe the elbow needs to actually be here, and then maybe it needs to be up here, so that elbow is kind of taking an arc like this. But again, this is still like elbow out so that it doesn't jump too much. And then once you get to the top, then you can start, you know, bringing that elbow in to get it like into this pose. So you have to, like, when you're doing this stuff, you get your keys like you want it, but then when you start working out these like breakdowns and in-betweens, you have to like pay super close attention to like where you plan on having the drawings and how you want that movement to look, right? I don't know, it's kind of hard to represent all this stuff on Sync Sketch when there's already drawings on the thing, and to like kind of recreate it, right? And to like hold drawings. I think there's a way to do held drawings on Sync Sketch. Ooh yeah, holds drawings or annotation to illustrate a motion path. Maybe that's what I want to. Well, I'll look into how to do that so I can give you more thorough and considered critiques. But hopefully through that YouTube thing showing like how different spacing affects different feels of motion, right? You can have like very regular motion, which is going to make something feel like very mechanical. It's going to move at a constant speed, like, and then if it reverses at a constant speed, it's going to feel very much like a robot or something scanning back and forth, right? If it's something that has weight, like a ball or a body part or whatever, like the most common motion is going to be like doing an ease in and then like an ease out, and it can take the exact same number of frames. Like maybe, I don't know, I didn't count how many drawings I did, maybe that's 8 frames. You can use the same frames over the same amount of timing, but this is going to feel like slow, fast, slow, slow, fast, slow, slow, fast, slow, slow, fast, slow, like that. This probably doesn't translate. You know what I mean? And then there's a ton of other different types you can have, like if somebody's starting to like swing a hammer or move something very heavy, it might start off very slow and then get really fast in its spacing and stuff, and then if it hits something, it might come to a stop almost immediately, or it might change directions almost immediately after it hits something. So all of these spacings are going to affect how your motion feels. Hopefully this isn't like super Captain Obvious stuff that I'm telling you. I want it to be, if this is obvious and we need to have like a deeper conversation about this or talk about specific transitions, I'm fine with that. But one of the things that like those timing charts that I was speaking to you about help you do is it helps you like pre-plan out, like, okay, when I go from, let's say I'm looking just at the guy, like this drawing of the guy, if I want to go from this to here, right? Cool. Like, how do I want that motion to happen? Well, those timing charts are essentially like planning out your breakdowns, right? If you wanted to start off slow like this and get faster and faster until you hit here, that timing chart, you know, here would say like, this is frame 173, and we're going to frame 178. So there's 5 drawings in between here, right? What I wanted to do is we'll do one there. The first one's close. The second one's there. Maybe the third one's there. Maybe the fourth one is starting to ease out or whatever. But this is a timing chart where you can kind of say, you know, sometimes people would even write, oh, this one's halfway there, right? This one's a third of the way there. This one's a fifth of the way there. And this one is like, I guess, how would you represent this? You could say this is like 4/5 of the way there, right? Or something like that. I don't know exactly, like that's what you would want to do, but it's a way to kind of think about like, well, what's the quality of motion? Like when she bumps her head against him, do I want it to be like really fast? Do I want it to be like it starts off slow and she kind of loses her balance and falls into him? If that were true, then maybe like she starts off doing stuff kind of in a more controlled way, right? But then the minute she starts to lose her balance, let's say we've decided that's where she loses her balance, it starts to get really wide until it hits, you know what I mean? So like the space in between all this stuff is like, it's everything when you're doing 2D animation. So that is kind of like a brief description of how I think about timing and spacing. It's kind of all the same thing when you talk about timing and space. Like the timing is kind of like the 173 to 178, and the spacing is like, how are those in-betweens going to happen there? And sometimes when doing the in-betweens and testing the motion, I realize like, oh my gosh, this can't be on 178 because it doesn't, I don't have enough frames to make it look smooth or like the quality of motion I'm trying to have it do. So maybe this needs to be 180 instead, right? So then I'm going to start adding in, well, where do I need those breakdowns? You know, like maybe 180's here. So maybe I need it to ease out a little bit more, or maybe I need to, you know, shift some of these marks a little bit earlier to kind of get the quality that I want. And so maybe that's where like the additional frames go or something like that, you know. So we can continue this conversation. It's obviously going to take more than like one 20-minute long video to explain all this stuff in detail, but the Richard Williams books does go in really nice detail on it. I hope you've been able to find a PDF. Read through that. It's very thought-provoking. It's kind of like a rite of passage for most animators. That's a very familiar book to most animators. And yeah, we can call out specific parts that you're having a tough time. But even like the exercise I do with this little ball, you can replicate that to say like, well, how does that timing feel without investing a lot of time in doing a bunch of drawings, right? Like you can just do little placeholder spacing and timing and stuff and then say, okay, that feels good. So now I'm going to go in there and I'm going to do the drawings kind of using that ball as like the center of her head or whatever. And then, and now I know at least I'm going to be kind of in the proper ballpark for the spacing that I want and the timing that I want to make that motion feel like I want it to feel, like what I recorded in my reference and all that stuff. So yeah, don't be afraid to like mock up stuff like what I did with that ball to sort of figure out, you know, anything you can do quick and dirty and make mistakes when it's just drawing a dot on the screen. so that you're not, that that you're kind of in the ballpark of making the right drawings, it would be fantastic. Also, I'd encourage you, like when you do things with your reference, like where your hand comes out and catches yourself like this, and that leg kind of comes up, and then you kind of lean back over and reposition that hand, like in your reference. Those are really nice details to capture in your animation. You know what I mean? That's going to give it a type of believability. Like there's a lot of things you're doing just naturally that I wouldn't preconceive, like the way that you've like kind of posed this arm. Like I find that to be interesting. To me, that's a little bit surprising, right? Like I don't know that I would have thought of that. And then the way you your arm comes out here for balance. Now I know you have another character like right there on top of you, but like maybe that can happen behind this character. So use your reference. Like there's a lot of great stuff in there. And then like that little hand adjust on the screen left hand after you've kind of gotten your weight back over here. Like this is nicely observed how you have that shoulder up, but this arm could be back here. Maybe you're trying to imply like a greater intimacy by having it be behind her, but maybe she could be showing a little bit more affection by having her like kind of overlap him and kind of give you that same kind of thing. Also, like eye lines are really gonna be important in your piece about, if she's like looking up at him. I don't know, think about that. But anyways, like those little details from your reference, those things are gold. And if you put them in there, it's going to be really, it's going to make this thing feel, it's going to give it a layer of authenticity that I think a lot of people appreciate. You know what I mean? Just food for thought. I'm not trying to make more work for you or anything. But yeah, so that's kind of a brief, I want to say, it's 20 minutes, but it's a brief dive on spacing, stuff like that. And yeah, let me know if this causes you to have any more questions or you want more specificity about any of this stuff. But yeah, keep going. I really like to see the progress that you're making on this piece. I look forward to seeing you in class. All right, bye.